Over the years, I've seen a lot of hood hinge related problems on the W123 and W126 chassis Mercedes. Half of the problems, I'm convinced, are because people don't know how to open and close the hood properly. So in this video, I'm going to go through the sequence of how to properly open and then properly close the hood. It's a very similar procedure on both these chassis. The hood hinge design is slightly different. But if you do the procedure properly, you're patient, don't force anything, your hood hinges will not mess up on you like I see on so many of these old cars. So the first thing is you release the lever inside the car, and you're going to come over to the hood, and for those of you not real familiar, you're going to say, well, what do I do next? You see this little hood pull here, it's not sticking out and you can't get a hold of it. Well, the way to get a hold of it is to grab the hood and lift up on it. When you lift up on it, it'll come up against that lock inside, and then the pull comes out to where you can pull it straight out and then open the hood. You open up to the mid position and it should stop right here. Under spring tension, you should not be able to open it into the full upright position without manipulating the locking and release levers. This is where it gets a little tricky. Some people say, well, there's two of them. There's one there, there's one here. I don't know which one to release first. Well, on these two chassis, you want to go to the driver's side and release this lock lever first. You're going to have to push down. Notice I can't release it here because the hood is up in that mid position. I have to push down lightly on the hood, and then I push this lever all the way down and then bring the hood up as far as you can so that this lever does not go back into the locking slot. Okay, you got that? Now we're going to move to the other side, the right side of the car, and we'll take this lever, push this lever down all the way, and then we can bring the hood straight up. And as you move it up, look over on that side, you can see it lock into the slot right there. And then the hood should stay. Now let's go back over to this side, and I could talk a little bit about this particular locking lever. If you're familiar with the difference between the 123 and 126, you notice in the 126 chassis, they really beefed this up. And this is because in the 123 chassis, they had a much thinner metal on this little lever, and I see them bent all the time, just like you see here. See how bent this is? It doesn't even go into the slot. And when that happens on your W123 chassis, it's very frustrating to get the hood up and in the upright position locked. You remember, you want it to lock in here. Notice it's not going to come down on its own. And so I think a lot of the problems I see with this little locking lever getting bent is people forget this step, and they come up here and they, either someone or some friend who's going to help you grabs a hold of the hood and yanks it down and bends that lever. So when you go to close the hood on these two chassis, the first thing you want to do is push back on the hood, back up into the upright position, release the pressure on this lever, pull this lever down, and you only need to work from the left side when you're closing the hood, because that one over there will release on its own. And then you can push down on the hood. Once you hear it click, that'll lock it into the mid position right there, and then you can go ahead and close it. What I do, I don't slam the hood down. There's a couple different ways you can do it. You could either bring the hood down to about 4 or 5 inches and just let it drop, or you can push it into the position and then lightly push down on both corners. Don't push on the hood. Most of these diesels have aluminum hoods, and you can bend the aluminum. You want to push on the corners of the grill right here, and then double check. On the 126, there's 2 catches on both sides. You want to make sure both are catched in a position. So that gives you an overview of how to open and close these hoods properly to prevent damage to those hood hinges. Now, the other 50% of the problems come from lack of lubrication, and let me show you up close what kind of problem this presents. Let me tell you what happened to my 300 SGL here. When I purchased this car, you couldn't open and close the hood. The owner had kind of given up because one of the pins had broken off And that's right, it broke off because it rusted out and it seized. And I had to literally hang the hood up by some ropes and lift it off, and we were able to drill out the pin, go right through the frozen pin and put a bolt in here. That was one way to fix this. A lot of time, it's just easier to go out and get a used, complete hood hinge assembly off another 126. They're the same all the way from 1981 all the way up to 1991. But now I'll show you some real close-in examples of what happens when you don't lubricate. And this, I mean, the 126, for instance, has multiple lubrication points. In fact, looking here, you can see there are 7 points in this mechanism that need to be lubricated. And look what happens when they don't get lubricated. Look at that pin and look at the amount of rust here. And eventually that will seize up in there, and just like you see on this hinge here, this pin seized totally in the bushing, and we had to cut the head of the bolt off to get this hinge off the hood. So if you let this go, if you ignore lubrication on your W123 or 126 hood hinges, you're going to pay the price. I guarantee someday you'll pay the price. I've seen, particularly on the 123 chassis like you see here, this only has 4 lubrication points, but this lower one is extremely critical. It goes into that side fender well where water can trap due to a plugged water drain, and this will eventually seize to the body panel, and when it does, you'll try to open and close the hood, and you'll rip this right out of the body, and then you have a huge problem to deal with. So you have to pay particular attention to the lower point on the 123, lubricate all of these. And what I like to do is I like to use automatic transmission fluid. It has a great ability to weep in, it holds well up to moisture, and you can, here's this syringe I love so much again. You can just come right in here and lubricate these points on the hinge. On the 126, you know, you got quite a few to do here, but the syringe really helps to get like down in behind here where you need to lubricate on the back side. So I recommend, if you want your hood hinges to last a long time, number 1, learn how to open and close the hood properly, and number 2, lubricate these hood hinges every 6 to 12 months.